The last thing we are going to look at today is what we call simple trinomial factoring. So this is a method that will allow you to very quickly and easily go from standard form of a quadratic relation to factored form. Now, before we start, it's important to know what a simple trinomial is. Okay, so a simple trinomial is something that looks like this. This is very similar to standard form, but the important piece to note is that the a value here, it looks like it's missing, but really it's just 1. Okay, so this technique only works when a is equal to 1, or in other words, when it looks like there's no number in front of the x squared term. And that's what a simple trinomial is, okay? It's an expression in standard form, an equation of a quadratic relation that has an a value of 1. Okay, so all of the examples I'm going to show you today will have an a value of 1, and all of your practice examples for this, again, have an a value of 1. They will all be simple trinomials so that you can apply this method. So what you are going to do, again, I'm just going to rewrite what this looks like. You will have y equals x squared plus bx plus c. And you are going to find two numbers. For this case, I will call them m and n, just so that I can show you with some letters first. And those two numbers need to multiply to give you c. Okay, so we would say if we had m times n would give you c, and add m plus n to give you b. Okay, so you need two numbers that satisfy that condition. Okay, so when you multiply them together, you get whatever the c value of your standard form equation is. And when you add them together, that includes subtracting if one of them or both of them are negative, then you get the b value. Okay, so whatever that middle number is in your standard form. The easiest way to visualize this is to look at some examples with actual numbers. Okay, so I'm going to just pull this example up here. So my first example here, I can see that it's a simple trinomial because there's no number in front of my x squared term. Okay, so that is a good example for what I can use to use this method. Okay, so I'm looking at this number here. My b value is negative 16, and my c value is positive 63. Okay, so I want to find two numbers that multiply. So something times something gives me positive 63, and something plus something, so they add to give me negative 16. Okay, so when I'm trying to think of this, the first thing that I do is I look at what the product is, or what my product is. So positive 63, and I list my factors. Okay, so your multiplication and division skills are going to be tested here. Obviously, you're allowed to use a calculator, so that's fine, but it will be faster if you know how to do this in your head, if you know what your times tables are. So 63, that one's kind of an easy one to figure out like what it's divisible by, but if you're not sure how to do it in your head, then usually what I would do is do 63 divided by, obviously it's divisible by 1, so I start with 2 divided by 2 equals, in this case it doesn't give me a whole number, I get 31.5, so that's not an option. Then I would do 63 divided by 3, I get a whole number there, which is 21, so I would have 3 and 21 as options. And again, you can keep going through and doing that until you get some other options. We get 7 and 9. And then what happens here, so, okay, because then I know 7, you could try 8, but if you do that, you get a decimal number, right? 63 is not divisible by 8, and then you can stop there. Okay, you don't need to keep going. Once you get to, so like if you're going through, you would try 63 divided by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you could try 9, but we already know it's divisible by 9 because we have this here, so then we stop. Okay, those are the only two options that we have. So I know that 3 times 21 gives me positive 63, and 7 times 9 gives me positive 63. And now I want to look and see, okay, what are my options for what the signs can actually be? Okay, so 3 times 21, like I said, gives me 63. 7 times 9 gives me 63. But they also need to satisfy the condition where if I add them together, they give me the b value of negative 16. Okay, so what that's telling me is if I were to think through my options, I could make the numbers both positive, I can make them both negative, or I can make one positive, one negative. Okay, so in this case, if these are multiplying to a positive number and adding to a negative number, they are both going to have to be a negative. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show kind of what my options are. So if this was my option, 3 and 21, I could have positive 3, positive 21. I could have negative 3, positive 21. I could have positive 3, negative 21, and I could have negative 3, negative 21. Okay, so if you're looking at that, you would kind of think, okay, you're going to multiply each and add each. So this would give you a positive 63 when you're multiplying, and it would give you a positive 24 if you add them. We don't want that, so that's not right. The next one, if you have negative 3 times positive 21, that gives you negative 63. Already that's not right because we know it has to be positive. Okay, the next option would give me something similar because I have a positive and a negative, so that's not going to work. And then my last one, negative 3 times negative 21 would give me positive 63. But if I added them, negative 3 plus negative 21 would give me negative 24. And again, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for negative 16. Okay, so those options are all scratched. We don't want to use 3 and 21. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to look at the options for 7 and 9. Okay, so you might have noticed when I was doing that, if I have one number positive and one negative, then when I am when I'm multiplying, I get a negative C value, which I don't want. Okay, so from these two, my options are going to either be plus 7 plus 9 or negative 7, negative 9. And then I'm going to check and see what is happening here. So let's say I put them in over here. So if I have positive 7 times positive 9, that would give me positive 63. However, positive 7 plus positive 9 would give me positive 16, and that's not what I want. So that means my only option left here is if these are negatives. Okay, so negative 7 times negative 9 would give me a positive 63. And negative 7 plus negative 9 would give me negative 16. So those are the two numbers that I want to use. So what this looks like then to go to factored form is we just write equals. We're going to have two brackets. Each will have an x in front. And then we just fill in the rest of the bracket with the numbers that we chose. Okay, so we chose negative 7, negative 9. So I write negative 7, negative 9, and that is my fully factored form. Okay, so once you get good at practicing this, you don't need to show all of this work here that I showed. You can just go right from your standard form to your factored form, and you don't need to really show any of the work because in your head you'd be doing, okay, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 63, add to negative 16. Okay, and like I said, once you get good at practicing this, you can usually find those two numbers in your head. If you can't, that's totally fine. It's okay to show your work to the side as well to make sure you get the right answer, but that is as easy as it can get. Okay, so if I look at a second example here, again, this is a simple trinomial, which tells me that I can use this method, right? There's no number written in front of my x squared term. So I've got a b value of positive 8 and a c value of positive 15. Okay, so I want to find two numbers and they need to multiply to give me positive 15, and they need to add to give me positive 8. Okay, in this case, the nice thing, if we're thinking about numbers that multiply to make 15, if you're going through, again, you can kind of try in your head or in your calculator, 15 does not divide by 2. 15 does divide by 3, and it gives you 5. 15 doesn't divide by 4. And then, like I mentioned, you can stop there because if you do 15 divided by 5, you get 3, which is the same pair I already have written here. So there are no other options. Technically, I guess actually I should show, you can write these down, 1 and 15. Sometimes that is the case, and usually if you get stuck on factoring, at least I know if I get stuck and think there's no option, it's because I didn't consider 1 and itself. Okay, so those I guess would be the two options we could look at. So if I had 1 and 15, those would obviously multiply to give me 15. But if I added them, they would give me 16, so I don't want that. But if I look at 3 and 5, I know that 3 times 5 will give me 15. And if I add them, 3 plus 5, that gives me 8. Okay, so those two numbers work. So my factored form is going to have two brackets, each with an x. And then my number that's going at the end is the numbers from both the brackets are the numbers that I decided on. So I'm going to have a plus 3 in this bracket and plus 5 in this bracket, and that is my factored form. Okay, the nice thing about this is if you are unsure of your work, you can always expand. Okay, so you can multiply everything in the first bracket by everything in the second bracket, expand, simplify, and you will get the same answer. Okay, if you check your work like that and you don't get the same answer, then you know you did something wrong and you can fix your mistake. Okay, it's not necessary to check it, but it's always nice when you have a way to check your math to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Okay, so those were two examples. We're just going to talk briefly about what happens in specific cases of this. So let's say we've got a simple trinomial and the c value is negative. Before we even start factoring, we think about, okay, so if this is what my example is, my b value is negative 7 and my c value is negative 18. Okay, so I need to find two numbers that would multiply, so something times something to give me negative 18, and then add, so something plus something to give me negative 7. Okay, so if I consider my options here, I know it's two numbers, right? If I'm multiplying them and getting a negative answer, negative 18, that tells me that one of those numbers has to be positive and one has to be negative. Okay, so one is positive, one is negative, and that will kind of help you narrow down your options when you're looking at the factors that you have. Okay, so if we look at this specific example, I want to find factors of 18. Okay, so what I do first is I just ignore the fact that it's negative 18 and I just write out what my factors are. Okay, so I would have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Okay, so those are my three options for the factors in general. But because my c value is negative, I know that one of my factors has to be negative and one is positive. Okay, so I could have negative 1 and 18 or 1 and negative 18. I could have negative 2 and 9 or positive 2 and negative 9. And I could have negative 3 and positive 6 or positive 3 and negative 6. Okay, so that helps you to kind of narrow down you don't need to consider the options where both are positive or both are negative because they're multiplying to give you a negative answer. So mathematically, the only possibility is one is positive, one is negative. Okay, so I'm going to just show this in purple here. So each pair I'm going to go through and add them to see what I would get. So negative 1 and 18 would give me positive 17. That's not right. Right, I want it to equal to negative 7. Negative 2 and positive 9 would give me positive 7. Okay, again, that's not what I want. Negative 3 and 6 would give me positive 3. That's not what I want. So I'm going to keep going. Positive 1 plus negative 18 would give me negative 17. Still not right. Positive 2 plus negative 9 gives me negative 7, which is what I want. So these are my two numbers, positive 2 and negative 9. Okay, and I'm just going to show it over here. So if I have positive 2 times negative 9 would give me negative 18. Okay, again, you can always check that in your calculator. And then positive 2 add negative 9 is really just the same as 2 subtract 9. That does give me negative 7. Okay, so those are my two numbers. And my factored form would look like x plus 2, x minus 9. Okay, and again, once you get good at this, once you've practiced lots, you can just go straight from this, the question, the standard form, to your factored form. You don't need to worry about showing all that in between work because I usually do it in my head, and I'm aware that lots of you will be able to do it in your head as well. Okay, so that's just a way to narrow down your factors if your C value is negative. One more example here that we will look at is what to do if your C value is positive, but your B value is negative. Okay, so what that would tell us, if I'm thinking, I'm just going to try to make up an example here. I forgot to write one down. If I have x squared, I'm just trying to come up with what my factors are going to be here. Let's do subtract 15x plus 36. Okay, so my C value is positive, but my B value is negative. Okay, so in this case, I've got B is negative 15, C is positive 36. Okay, so my two numbers that I want, they need to multiply to give me positive 36, and they need to add to give me negative 15. Okay, so I know that if I want it to multiply to positive 36, they could both be positive numbers. But if I'm going to add a positive plus a positive, it's not going to give me a negative 15. So my other option that I need to consider is what my options for my two numbers are to multiply to a positive value, and that is if they are both negative. Okay, we know that a negative times a negative will give us a positive. And if we have a negative plus a negative, that's going to still give us a negative number. Okay, so again, I'm going to look at my factors here. So factors of 36, in this case, there are quite a few. Okay, so we would have 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and 6 and 6. Okay, in this case, it's all right. Like if you have a double factor like that, or like a snake eye factor, I guess it's not snake eyes, but you know what I mean, like where they're both the same, 6 and 6, that is an option as well. Okay, so let's say like this was a negative 12, then that would be an option. So because I can see that my C value is positive, my B value is negative, I know that both of these factors need to be negative. Okay, so I'm going to write them both as negatives. Then I'm going to go through and check my options. Okay, so again, all of these will multiply to positive 36, but I want to see what they would add to. So negative 1 plus negative 36 would give me negative 37. That's not right. Negative 2 plus negative 18 would give me negative 20. That's not right. Negative 3 plus negative 12 would give me negative 15. That is right. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so again, if I have negative 3 multiplied by negative 12, that would give me positive 36. And then negative 3 plus negative 12 would give me negative 15. So my fully factored form here would look like x minus 3, x minus 12, and it's easy as that. Okay, you will notice that I gave you a lot of practice questions for this, and that's because this is one of those things that the more you practice, the quicker you get, the more efficient you are, um, the more confident you will feel with it. Okay, so it may seem tedious, but practice, practice, practice. Factoring is one of those things that it will really stick. There's kind of a learning curve, and once you've hit that curve, you will be golden. So do lots of practice, rewatch this if needed, and that is how you factor a simple trinomial. So in standard form to an equation in factored form.